All right. Thank you for joining this TenantCloud presentation. If you can hear the sound of my voice, if you could go ahead and do me a favor and just click one of the little emoji icons on the bottom of your screen, that would be fantastic. Awesome. Fantastic. Glad everybody can hear me. Sometimes we have technical issues, so just want to make sure we're not having them today. Today's presentation is going to be on the innovation in rent payments, and we're going to touch on some other aspects of rent payments as well, including some aspects of fraud in the rental industry and how to address that as a property manager or landlord. If anybody has been a property manager or landlord for any period of time, you have likely encountered it. The more tenants you have, the greater risk you are exposed to encounter things like fraud with rental payments, whether that be stolen debit or credit cards or using a family member's account without their permission, that type of stuff. You are going to encounter that the longer you are in property management. I personally have experienced this over the years in my um, experience as a property manager. And we did want our fraud director of fraud and support teams to join us for this presentation, but she had prior commitments that took priority over it. But she was kind enough to contribute a couple of the more pressing questions and concerns that property managers need to be aware of, things that she encounters on a regular basis, and she's also provided her advice and feedback on how to mitigate those risks and to protect yourself and your investment, and to also know when to reach out to the Tenant Cloud fraud support team if necessary. Now, hopefully, none of that ever happens and you don't ever have to reach out to our fraud team. That's probably a bad day if you have to do that. But we definitely want to make sure that you are equipped with the knowledge and information you need to be able to operate your rental management portfolio efficiently. So, without further ado, we are going to jump right in. I'm not going to try to take up your entire morning. I believe, slotted about 45 minutes for this, but going to try to do it a little bit quicker than that. There's nothing that is really rocket science in any of our webinars. A lot of it is largely common sense, a lot of it is standard practices, but it's always good to get a refresher, even if you've heard these things 1,000 times before, because you never want to be caught off guard, especially as it pertains to rental payments and fraud in the rental payment industry and the like. So, we're also going to touch on a lot about the different types of payment methods that have been coming out over the past couple of years. There's a lot of quick payment methods and wallets and things like that that are really invading the payment industry. And it's some really cool technology. And so we're going to touch on those different pieces of technology and how we see that getting integrated and implemented into the rental industry in the future, as well as the existing payment system that TenantCloud uses, why we chose it, what experiments we've done with other payment processors and the like. So hopefully it doesn't bore you to death. And we definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. We do hope that the value that you get out of this presentation is worth it. And if you do want to access the recording at any point, this will be available via the link that you used to originally join. In about 10 to 15 minutes after the presentation has ended, you'll be able to use that same link to join and access the recorded version. And we'll also upload it to our Tenant Cloud YouTube channel within a couple of business days after this has ended. And also, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to post them into the chat thread or using the Q&A button right there as well. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, we'll try to get through as many of those questions as possible. If you have questions that go unanswered or you think of something after the presentation has ended, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to our support team. They're more than happy to try to answer those questions for you, and we'll try to get you as much information and value as possible even after this webinar has ended. A lot of the support team members that are on our support team, if you did not know, a lot of them actually have property management experience. A lot of us come from a property management background, and a lot of people that are involved in building the product and managing the product in general on the Tenant Cloud team are actually a lot of us have background in property management. So we're going to jump right in and start this presentation. I am going to share my screen real quick here because the last time that I tried to just share the PDF, it didn't work very well. So we're just going to go ahead and share the whole screen here. If you can see this window and me moving my mouse around, if you can again hit those emojis and let me know that you can see the screen, that's fantastic. Awesome. Everybody can see it. All right, we're going to jump right into the presentation. So, we are again talking about the future of rental payments and all that comes along with that. If you can see this presentation, if you can go ahead and hit those emojis again, I'm going to pull it up just so I can make sure you saw the presentation. Great. Sorry, just trying to make sure that I'm not encountering any technical issues with this presentation. These webinar platforms can be a little bit finicky sometimes. So, we're going to explore a lot of the technologies and the trends that have been taking place over the past couple years. As everybody is well aware, I'm sure there is a lot of payment technology in the fintech world that has been invading the space, and a lot of people have started adopting those things in the rental industry as well, especially a lot of smaller, what I like to call DIY, do it yourself landlords, where maybe it's just one or two or three rentals that they're managing. And then those people end up coming to TenantCloud, the TenantCloud platform, or other platforms like ours because of the issues that they've encountered with those different payment platforms. And so, if that's you, then this webinar is definitely going to hopefully provide a lot of helpful information to you in that regard to help you avoid a lot of those pitfalls that a lot of people have made, especially first starting out as a property manager or landlord, but also just to help you kind of gauge where the Tenant Cloud system is at in terms of the payment processor we use, why we use them, and also the direction that that is going. And then some things that, even though we use one of the best payment processors in the world, and it is largely customized to meet the needs of property managers, how there are still risks that you have as a property manager and landlord, and how you can mitigate against those and reduce your risks and exposures as a landlord. In the not too distant past, even just 10 years ago, even when I was a property manager managing units, there were people largely paid with checks, and some people were still, believe it or not, trying to pay in cash sometimes. But largely, by and large, the method that most people paid with was checks, money orders, cashier's checks, that type of thing. I used to scan checks through with a little check scanner at my desk, and I would say that over 60, maybe even 70% of our tenants, even at a 700 plus community, was using checks and money orders. And that was extremely time consuming. We had a lot of returned checks, a lot of issues where people weren't putting their name on right, they weren't putting their unit number. I would get blank money orders put in our deposit box and have no idea. And they would sit in my desk for months because so many people did it that it was impossible to know whose apartment it actually went out to. And so I remember at one point, I probably had 3 or 4 money orders sitting in my desk for like 6 months. So it's uh, definitely a high risk way of paying rent, especially if you're not filling it out properly. But not only that, there have been experiences at some communities that I have worked at over the years, as well as just people that I know in the rental industry where their rent boxes were broken into overnight around the first of the month. That is a huge pain when you have to go and basically inform all of your tenants that, hey, somebody smashed the building and took the entire rent box and all the contents. And so now it's this huge headache for your tenants to go and to track down their receipts for these money orders, if they even kept them, to cancel their checks that they had made out, to make sure that their bank doesn't allow them to go through. Just a huge, massive nightmare. And so, as the world has begun to turn digital, so have our payment methods. And so it's important to understand those payment methods and also the risks that come along with those, because just like with money orders and cash, as secure as that may seem to you, as somebody physically handing you some type of payment that either is certified or it's cash or whatever, those, just like those payment methods come with their risks, so do modern payment methods, and it's important to understand those. Checks and cash, again, they have been the bedrock of rent payments for decades, for practically as long as the property management industry has existed, much like other industries. And we have started to replace those with digital payment solutions. There's everything from ACH, to which has been around for 50, 60 some years. There has there's credit and debit cards. There are quick payment apps, which are fantastic in their own right. I personally use some of the quick payment apps. And they're great if you go out with a group of friends and you need to transfer somebody 20 bucks because they paid for the bill for dinner or whatever to make it easy for everybody. And then everybody transfers them Venmo or Cash App or something to cover your portion of the bill. It's great for stuff like that. And a lot of these payment methods are now faster transactions. Some of them are immediate, instantaneous from one account to another. And a lot of them are pretty good at creating digital records. The question is, do they create the digital record that is needed to meet the criteria for rental industry laws, whether it be your state laws or even on a federal level? And some of these do not. So it's important, again, to understand the different payment methods. And there are more being introduced, it seems like, on a quarterly basis. There seems to be a new arrival in the fintech world, although there is also some consolidation taking place between these different players, and some are gaining more traction in the market than others. So, with the various digital platforms available, again, it's important to understand the laws and the regulations as they evolve in the rental industry and how those are applicable to the way that you collect rent, but not just how you collect rent, how that money is received, how it is stored, and how it is documented to avoid potential legal headaches down the road. And as a property manager, it is, of course, your responsibility to make sure that you're staying on top of those changes in regulations and laws to make sure that your operations are in line with those requirements. Like I said, quick payment apps, they're awesome. I use a lot of them myself. They're great for day-to-day money transfers, but they do have issues. Things like privacy settings need careful attention. Some of those payment methods, if you don't intentionally change your privacy settings on your end, your information might be shared with other people. And some of those could be dangerous situations, like if you do pay rent via something like a Venmo app or whatever, and you do not hide your privacy settings. And let's say you have somebody who, let's say an extreme scenario, you have a restraining order against somebody, but they see that you paid for a particular property or a landlord, and then they start connecting the dots and find out where you live now, that type of thing. That's an extreme scenario, but it's something that a property manager needs to be aware of and the risks that are associated with those settings in some of those applications. It's one thing if you're just transferring money to a friend and somebody sees that you transferred 15 bucks to somebody to cover an expense because they paid for your lunch or whatever. It's quite another if they see that you're paying $1,750 a month in rent, or worse, it's got identifying information about where you live or the landlord associated with the rental property, etc. And a lot of those apps also lack the tools for nuanced rental transactions for proper separation of funds. For example, if you need to keep escrow funds separate from your operating funds. So if you have somebody paying a security deposit and you have somebody paying rent, does that application allow you to keep those funds separate at all times in separate accounts, in an escrow account and in an operating account? And also things that could lead to potential disputes and financial confusion, which we'll go over some of those things here. Here are some of the pros and cons. The cons of some of these are, again, privacy concerns. Some of them are business use limitations. For example, some of these payment processors, you can only get a business account on an invitational basis. Not everybody can just log into their account and access business features or even a business account. And a lot of them do not allow you to use the application for business purposes unless you have a business account. And there have been plenty of circumstances where property managers and landlords have actually been banned from the platform because they were using it for business purposes outside of the terms and conditions of that app. And they also do not charge fees when you're using the personal um, parts of the application. But once you do get approved for a business use account, then you start typically incurring processing fees and things of that nature, and additional rules that govern the payments that you are accepting and processing on that app. One of the other concerns is that's important to note is some of the payment processors don't allow you to use it with all banks. Zelle, for example. They do not work with every single bank and credit union out there, and there are over 18 million people who use payments in the United States today that do not necessarily use a actual financial institution like a Chase or Discover or whatever. They use a prepaid account like Flare or Chime or any number of these other payment processors, and a lot of those do not necessarily work very well with Zelle or work at all. And my bank, for example, one of my banks has a very strict limit on how much can be sent through a payment processor like Zelle. The limit is $500, and that's the amount. I think it's like a week or a month I can send that amount, which makes it extremely difficult if my landlord wanted me to pay via Zelle and I can only pay $500 at a time. And that's not the case with every single bank. Different banks have different rules because Zelle is one of those things that's put together by a conglomerate of the big banks, and they each kind of set their own individual rules for transactions and things of that like. So that's just another example of a restrictive feature that's in place for somebody who's wanting to pay rent via one of these apps. And you can see all the others. We're not going to go through each one of these. Again, these are all great payment apps. I use probably about three or four of these on this list. I used my Google Wallet this morning to pay for my coffee. And these are all fantastic options, but it's important to understand the downsides and the risks as it relates to rental payments. And there's not a lot of education out there right now about the different payment apps and why some of them should not be used or there are certain risks associated with them for rental payments. And so we wanted to touch on that in this webinar to make sure that people have some of that information and start thinking about some of those things as it relates to these different payment processors. Here's a quick scenario, which is just a fictional scenario that we just came up with, but it's a scenario that has played out in the past, where let's say one tenant accidentally sends the rent payment to the wrong username, similar to the landlords, but they didn't verify the phone number and they still authorized the payment to go through, but the name was off by one character. Now you have this huge issue where the landlord has to spend considerable time trying to help the tenant resolve this issue. Is it the landlord's fault? No, it's the tenant's fault. And the tenant has to now go and try to get this money back from this stranger that may or may not return the funds because a lot of these payment processing apps, they do not necessarily have the resources in place to be able to get that money back, and two, they state in a lot of their terms and conditions that if you're sending it and you're using the friend to friend app and you send somebody the wrong money, they may not be able to help you get that money back. And whereas a lot of the business accounts do come with those protections, as if you were using a major payment processor, kind of like the one TenantCloud uses through Stripe, where there are controls in place to be able to mitigate those risks and identify lost funds or fraudulent funds that have been sent can be clawed back and things of that nature. And the landlord is largely responsible for ensuring that all of their tenants have paid correctly and then manually reconciling those transactions with their records. Because, again, a lot of the quick payment apps that are out there today do not necessarily integrate with a lot of different software, such as property management software, where it automatically accounts for these things and properly records it, assigns it to the right tenant's account, and the like. And when you are doing those by hand, you're prone to human error. And so it can cause even more issues. The idea in property management is to streamline everything, right? So you want to make things as easy as possible, not just for yourself, but also for your tenants, and reduce the opportunities for things to take place that shouldn't take place. In contrast, a landlord using a dedicated property management software like TenantCloud or any other property management software out there for the most part, you can set up individual accounts for each tenant. And then the software automatically creates the invoicing, it tracks the payment, and directly deposits them into the landlord's bank accounts. In the case of Tenant Cloud, that's automatic. You can set it up to where if it's a deposit, it's identified as such and it's sent to an escrow account. If it is a rent payment, it automatically goes to your operating account or whatever account you have set up for those funds. In fact, you can set up multiple bank accounts, virtually unlimited actually on Tenant Cloud. Whereas a lot of these payment processors out there that aren't necessarily designed with property management in mind, you're limited in how many bank accounts you can add. For some of them, you can only add one bank account. Some are capped at two, some are capped at four. And so understanding how the money flows in that account and how many bank accounts you can set up. And then not only that, but how many legal entities can you use? A lot of property managers and landlords today have multiple legal entities. And so that's something that we had to think of when we were going into moving from our old payment processor into a new one. And we actually tested out a payment processor that we have close ties with. And we were really eager to use them because they had a lot of powerful features that we could use. And I'm not going to name them by name because they are a great payment processor and don't want to throw them under the bus. And they're actually growing, and you're probably going to start hearing their name out there in the market shortly. And they're going to be one of those up and coming payment processors that I was talking about a little earlier, where they seem to be popping up every quarter. This one is pretty unique. But as powerful of a payment processor as it was, and as many cool features that they had, especially on the fraud side and preventing payments that shouldn't happen and that sort of thing, they did not have the features that we needed in order to customize it enough for our property managers to make our property managers' lives easier, not more difficult. And so we ended up going with the different payment processor that we're with now, which is Stripe. And so the reason we did that is because of their robust security features and reducing the risk of unauthorized access and ensuring transaction integrity and providing both the landlords and the tenants more control and peace of mind that the rent collections that are taking place, we're talking about processing millions and millions of dollars per month, is handled securely and efficiently. And so having a platform that is designed specifically for property management is crucial for managing your rental properties safely and effectively. But looking ahead, that doesn't mean that things won't change. And they are. Every day they're changing. Payment platforms are improving on a daily basis. Even payment platforms like Venmo and Zelle are far different today than they were a year ago. And they continue to improve the way that the payment processing apps work, introducing more features, just like most softwares try to do, including TenantCloud. We try to release all kinds of improvements throughout the year. In fact, we have one coming in the next month or two. It's something we've been talking about for the past year or two, and I am super excited about it. It has to do with move-ins and move-outs, and it's going to be an amazing feature. I'm actually helping the product team work on it right now. Super pumped for it. And that is something that we continuously try to do, is release new features, improve existing features, improve the security of payments and alike. And so there is a future that likely includes blockchain technology, the technology that is largely behind a lot of the um, payment types such as Bitcoin and others. We also see an increase in mobile wallet use, even including the rental industry for property management portfolios where it's an apartment community and you have an on-site office where people can walk in and pay with their wallet. Or even as the mobile wallets continue to improve in their technology, they can be used without even being in person. They can just pay using the wallets as a digital form of payment. And so, as those continue to advance and introduce new features and things that become more customizable, where we can introduce them into the rental industry, we do see those things being incorporated into the rental industry. But of course, as anybody knows, the rental industry is probably one of the slowest moving industries out there. We were still using cash, money order, and personal checks for rent payments as early as just a few years ago. 2020 kind of changed that for a lot of places because people stopped doing in-person things and stopped handling physical checks and the like, but it's made a comeback already. And it's just kind of one of those things that it's going to take time for people to stop using those things and being accustomed to it. But it's also going to take this type of technology to continue advance to where we can incorporate it safely and effectively into a property management system where it makes sense for the property manager and your tenants. All that being said, the two primary payment methods that are still the most common methods used today in all industries across the board, including in the rental industry, is credit and debit cards. Cash is still the third ranked, and mobile and other digital payments, as even with all the progress and the popularity that they have and the progress that they've made, they're still ranked last in payment methods that are used in the United States for day to day transactions and even things like paying rent. In fact, you may have been one of the people who have started to receive emails from us about debit and credit cards, for example. The reason that we've been sending out that communication is because a result of some of these studies that we've started to research and identify trends in rental payments. It's become increasingly clear that tenants actually prefer to pay with debit and credit card when possible. They still pay via ACH, but a lot of them will even pay with a debit or credit card despite processing fees. Whether that's because of the different rewards that are now becoming increasingly common as the credit and debit card industry has to compete with all of these payment apps like Venmo and Zelle and the like. It just seems to be becoming more common that debit cards back in the day didn't really have a whole lot of rewards. And if they did, they were only available if you had a certain amount of money in your account at any given time and so on. Now, debit and credit cards are both increasingly offering rewards and credit rewards. For example, the Venture X rewards card, you can get all kinds of points and miles and things of that nature. Even if you pay a processing fee, it's very close to where you're only losing $5 to $10, or it's even a wash. And sometimes it's even more beneficial for you to use the credit card and then just pay it off and get all those points and use them, because it's better to get something in exchange for using your card rather than just paying it and not getting any rewards at all, if that makes sense. So the option is, for a tenant, I can pay with ACH, and yeah, I only have to pay a two, three, whatever dollar processing fee, or I can pay with a debit card, or I can pay with my rewards card and I can get 2x rewards points back, or 3x, whatever their card offers them, and miles and the like. And yes, I'm paying a 20, 30, whatever dollar processing fee, but I'm also getting 25 or whatever dollars back in points and miles that I can use. And it's a benefit that I can use. So for whatever reason, whatever is motivating people to pay using these methods, it is increasingly being used in the rental industry. In fact, I would say, I think our latest report that we had come out, something like two-thirds or one-third of tenants on TenantCloud are actually using debit and credit cards to pay rent. And so it's just something to keep in mind. If you do not have the debit or credit card option enabled on your account, you should probably go enable it in your account right now, because you probably have tenants that would like to pay using that method. Maybe it's because, like me, they have had a ACH account. My routing and accounting number somehow has been compromised multiple times over the years, and it is easier for me to just cancel a credit or a debit card, or even just log into my app and disable that specific card immediately within seconds of seeing something come through that looks weird, and then take the time to investigate it to see if it's been compromised, or maybe I just had a charge come through that I didn't realize that I was paying for, or something of that nature. Whereas with an ACH payment, if your routing and accounting number is compromised, you have to go through this whole rigmarole of completely changing bank accounts and getting a new routing and a new accounting. And then you have to go into all your accounts and change all the stuff for your bills and the like. And it's just a huge pain. And so maybe that's one of the driving factors. I'm not entirely sure. But again, whatever the case is, tenants clearly are wanting to pay via debit or credit card. So if that is you and you don't have it enabled in your account, I would highly recommend enabling that. You can set it to where the tenant pays the fee or you pay the fee. It doesn't matter. But regardless, tenants want to pay via that method, even if there are processing fees. So, something to keep in mind with your Tenant Cloud account. Imagine a world where rent payments are just one part of a comprehensive financial service. This goes back to all of the ways that technology is invading the rental industry and how it's impacting it. And one of the ways that that's already happening is platforms like, if you've never heard of it, Orion House. It's where you can actually rent your primary residence as a tenant, like an apartment at a community, and then you can rent it out for short-term rentals while you're gone. In fact, a lot of apartment communities have started to enroll in this platform and offer their rental property as one of these places where tenants can legally do that, and you receive a share of the rental revenue without having to deal with the hassle of managing a rental property. So Orion House is essentially a property management company and a short-term rental company, and they rent out to both. They rent out to both a permanent renter who signs the actual lease, and then it's almost like a kind of a sublease, but on a short-term basis, where if you travel a lot, let's say you go for business, or maybe you just need a place temporarily, and you whatever your situation is, you can rent out your permanent rental for short-term rentals. And that is only possible with the advancement of technology that we have today and the different payment processing platforms that have been integrated and offering all these features because the mind-blowing amount of stuff that has to go on with those different types of transactions is pretty crazy if you start thinking about all of the logistics that have to go into that. And so the only way that's even possible in this day and age is through the technology that has been introduced, including on the payment side. And this is largely enabled through fintech advancements, short term rental software, integrated into property management tools, and making it a seamless experience for everybody involved, including the short term renter. In addition to that, there are a lot of other things that have started to pop up. You've probably started seeing reports for like reporting your rental transactions to get credit for it. The problem with some of those is that all the hoops that your tenants have to jump through in order to do that. They have to connect bank accounts, or they have to get their landlord to sign an approval to report rent from the software that they're using. And they have to give Equifax or whoever access to that system. And there's all kinds of hoops that you have to jump through to do that. But it's become clear that tenants do want to get credit for paying their rent. They feel like if they're paying rent every month, that's basically going to be the equivalent or maybe even more than what a mortgage payment is going to be. They want to get credit for that. And so it's become increasingly popular. In fact, nowadays, tenants will actually ask the landlord, do you offer rent reporting as a part of your rental? And so TenantCloud went in and we decided to integrate it right into the system to make it as easy as possible. That's another way that payment technology has been integrated and then credit reporting has been integrated to allow that to happen. And the different payment models are starting to take those things more into consideration. Before, it was just kind of like this little off in the corner model of credit reporting that allowed that to influence your credit score and your FICO score and the like, but it's increasingly becoming a part of someone's actual credit score and impacting the way that their credit is rated. And so we have that integrated into TenantCloud. Again, Ojai's rental revenue sharing. It's not just the fact that you can rent out your rental property. You can actually rent out your rental property and you can get a certain amount of money for it. And it's actually a pretty decent rental revenue sharing program. Other programs like Stake.rent, you can get cash on purchases, you can improve your credit, get early paychecks, banking, and more. And all of these things are starting to kind of infiltrate into the property management industry. And it's going to increasingly do so. And Tenant Cloud is continuously looking at these different software platforms and how to integrate these features to benefit not just you as a property manager, but how can we make it more attractive for a tenant to rent at your property because you offer these things? Again, going back to the growing use of debit and credit cards for rental payments, one of the other concerns that a lot of tenants have with ACH payments, and we've tried to mitigate this with our next day payments feature for ACH payments, but even that has its own risks. And so a lot of tenants just prefer to pay with a debit and credit card because they hate waiting for ACH payments to clear. And that's just the way that ACH payments work because that technology really hasn't been improved since its early existence. And so, as much as fintech companies and we at Tenant Cloud have tried to mitigate that and try to speed up the process, there's only so much we can do without the core product itself being improved. And so, a lot of tenants just prefer to pay via debit or credit card because of the whole ACH payment thing. And so that is another factor that I'm sure plays into why they want to use debit and credit cards. Speed, security, rewards, and payment being able to contribute to credit history. And not just that, if you pay with a credit card, you're kind of double dipping on your credit score. Actually, you're getting credit for both paying with the credit card and you're also getting credit with rewards and you're getting credit because the tenant is likely using our credit reporting feature to report their on-time rent payments and getting credit. So it's actually kind of a triple dip right there for all credit and benefit purposes. So again, there's a lot of factors that I'm sure are playing into it. I don't think it's just one common thing. I think that it's just a bunch of factors for different people that impact it. Pros for debit, again, we've already touched on most of these, but building credit, less debt, using debit, fraud protection, no annual fees typically, no interest charges on debit. You get rewards and cash back on debit, faster payment clearance. You don't have to wait for the ACH payment to clear. If somebody pays on TenantCloud with a debit or credit card, it comes out as quickly as if they swiped it at their favorite coffee shop. The money comes out right away, done. They don't have to worry about making sure that they keep money in there and budgeting for it and the like. And dispute resolution is typically a lot easier with debit and credit cards, and they are, of course, widely accepted. That's why I was saying if you don't offer that, as if you don't have that enabled on your Tenant Cloud account, again, it's probably a good idea to activate it. And then, of course, the primary benefits for ACH is they're widely accepted. Pretty much everybody accepts ACH payment, and the fees are typically lower, but you don't get benefits such as rewards points and mileage and the like. Which brings us to the Tenant Cloud property management software again. We have integrated with the payment processor that we believe offers the most flexibility, the most protections, the highest amount of speed, and the support team also, which is a crucial part of using a payment processor. That's one of the pain points of a lot of these different quick apps is they don't offer adequate support. If they offer a phone number, sometimes the hold times are forever. Sometimes it's maybe somebody who is difficult to understand and maybe don't understand exactly what is taking place and the nuances of the payment transaction that took place that you had issue with, especially because it's a real estate transaction, which comes with its own whole host of requirements and regulations and risks and the like. And maybe they just don't have phone support at all. Maybe it's just email support, maybe it's just phone support, or maybe it's just instant chat. And so that just adds another layer of complication. Whereas the payment processor that we use has a full support team. It's way bigger than our support team. We don't have any wait times and hold times. We can get through to them. We can get the questions that we need answered. If a landlord has an issue with a payment or something, or we need to track something down, or there's a fraud issue, we have the resources at our disposal to be able to get it resolved as quickly as possible. And that is not the case with a lot of other payment processors. And so that's one of the core reasons why we went with the payment processor that we did. Of course, all of the features that we have on our platform have to integrate with the payment processor that we use. So, rent collection, grace periods, late fee invoicing, and the like. Automated invoicing and accounting, automated late fee invoicing, automated grace periods, virtually unlimited legal entities and bank accounts. If you need more of those, you can contact our sales team. If you've maxed out on your current plan, our business plan can be customized to where we can pretty much add however many legal entities and bank accounts you need to add. Yes, it costs us money. That's why there's a limit on it on the lower plans, because for every one you add, it costs Tenant Cloud money with the payment processor. And so we do limit them on the lower plans. But if you need to add more, it just comes with your plan that you're on. And we, on the business plan, we can customize it to pretty much whatever you need. We have property managers and landlords that have 50, 60, 70 different legal entities and bank accounts to accompany each one of those legal entities. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need to expand your capabilities there. Automated property management fee and owner distribution invoicing and sending that money safely to an owner or two, or having the owner send you money for a contribution and the like, and automatically calculating that in the system. All of that has to tie into the payment processor we use, and then automatically syncing that with QuickBooks Online. And the new one of the new features that we're working on, which can't really disclose right now, but it's going to tie into payments and reporting and the like with your bank account. It's going to be amazing and super exciting with this new payment processor that we're using in Stripe. Automated reporting and the types of reporting that we can do based on the transaction types and the way that Stripe records it in their system allows us to continue to innovate and introduce new features and new types of reports. And all that stuff is in the pipeline. So, again, a lot of that ties back to who you're using as a payment processor. 1099 tax forms automatically generated, automated equipment expense tracking, and there's more stuff that we're working. We just created a new iteration of our equipment tracking tool, which is pretty cool if you hadn't had a chance to check it out. And that's something that we're currently collecting feedback on as our users use it with the new innovations that we've done and what else can be improved in that feature. And as we continue to witness these exciting developments and the changes in the payment industry, staying ahead means proactive and open to new technologies, which TenantCloud is. And we're constantly reviewing and researching innovative tools and how they can be developed into the TenantCloud system and incorporate them to make your life and your tenants' lives and your owners' lives and your service pros and your team members' lives a whole lot easier. And so if you know of any integrations or ideas that you feel would improve the Tenant Cloud platform, our product team loves getting that feedback. Even if you don't think so, because just because you give us feedback doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen tomorrow, right? It takes time, it gets prioritized, it gets weighted out. And so the more people that request a feature or an integration, the more likely it is to happen. And I don't know the exact number, but in all of our prior years, in when we do a year in review and we look back to look at all the features and changes and improvements that we've done, it's somewhere around 70% of all those things and all those changes that we do in the Tenant Cloud system are a direct result of your feedback as a user. And so don't think that it just goes into oblivion, into this dark black hole that nobody ever sees. It does. It gets reviewed by our product managers. Every single idea that comes through from that idea ticket in your Tenant Cloud account. So please do not hesitate to reach out and give us your ideas. With that being said, we are going to jump into the Q&A here real quick and answer any questions that may have come through during this presentation. And also go over the questions and answers that our fraud director has gone over as well. That she could not, again, make it to this presentation. She wanted to, but she had some prior commitments that took priority. And so she did take some time to provide us with a couple of questions that she felt are relevant to the property management industry, things that she's seen as the director of fraud and things she's encountered that some of our property managers have experienced and our tenants have experienced. So the first one that she has here is, what are the best practices for landlords to minimize payment fraud risks? The best way for a landlord to minimize payment fraud is for them to screen their tenants extremely well. And they can do that on Tenant Cloud using our in-depth screening. If you don't know, we are releasing a new county search, which provides much more granular detail than just your typical federal national search. The way that a lot of the national searches work is that they actually buy that information in bulk from all the screening agencies, and they buy it periodically. It's not necessarily every minute of the day. They might buy bulk information on a weekly or monthly or even quarterly basis. And so the information that they provide in those instantaneous screening reports that you see marketed online a lot of times, some of them for as cheap as like 10, 15, whatever bucks, that's because they've just ordered bulk information from the major screening providers out there, and they just have it ready to go in their servers. And what Tenant Cloud's new system is actually going to do is, because we've encountered issues with that method of screenings, and yes, it's nice that it's cheap, but it's not helpful to property managers if you're not getting proper information that's been detailed and also vetted. And so we actually have in-depth screenings that we're releasing where it's going to be on a county search level. And we're actually going to have processors with this company that we've contracted with, where they're actually going to verify this information and report it on the report. It's going to be really awesome, very detailed information, up-to-date information, and not anything that has a potential for being outdated information at all. The second way that she recommends to mitigate payment fraud risks is to make sure that you're at the lease signing or prior to handing them keys, that you get the driver's license and social security number if you haven't already done so from them, to make sure it matches their screening information that they provided, since a lot of the screenings today are done online. Yes, it's great that that stuff is done online, but you want to make sure that the information that they have provided matches what information they actually have on their physical documents. So you want to see their driver's license and make sure that their name, picture, all that stuff lines up with the information that they have provided to you at the time that they applied. That is actually fantastic information, because I actually caught that one time as a property manager, where the person who was moving in was actually the son, but the person who had actually applied online was the father. The reason they did that is because the son had stuff on his screening reports. So when they came in, yes, the guy's name was the same because he was a junior. So all of his information pretty much was identical until he handed me his driver's license. And I looked and the date of birth didn't line up. His picture didn't line up and all that information wasn't matching. And so that's an important step in the move in process to help you reduce the amount of risk. A lot of red flags that will come up are going to be in the criminal and background check. And those new county reports that we've introduced are going to help you to be able to do that even better. Real quickly, and we're going to jump into some of your questions. The second question she wanted to address is what steps should be taken in the event of a suspected fraudulent transaction by one of my tenants? This is more common than you may think. I touched on it at the first part of this presentation where there are scenarios where somebody may use a stolen debit or credit card to pay rent. There may be a scenario where they use a family member's a card or a family member's bank account that they got information, but they didn't have permission to process it. And that can come back on you as a chargeback or a dispute that you might end up having to pay for. And it just causes all kinds of issues. So her recommendation is if you suspect like something like that may have taken place with one of your tenants, call us immediately at TenantCloud to have our fraud team look into the account and possibly issue a refund back to the payment method that was used before it turns into a full-blown dispute and you end up getting charged the dispute fee. And so if there's anything fraudulent that you expect during the application process or even with a tenant that's lived for you a while, whatever it may be, if you suspect fraud of any type with your tenant or a transaction, reach out to the Tenant Cloud system immediately and let us know, and our team will be happy to take a look into it. And those are the two primary questions that she felt like, based on her experience and interactions with different scenarios that have taken place, that she felt like that information would be relevant to this webinar and to equip you with that information. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and go through and answer some of these Q&A and chat questions. And again, appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for this presentation. I understand we've already gone well over the time limit that I kind of indicated I was trying to stick under. I was trying to stick to 30 minutes. We're now at 46 minutes. So we're going to try to speed through some of these questions. If your question is not answered or you think of something after the webinar has ended, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If it's something we can help you with, we're certainly happy to try to answer your question as well. Is TenantCloud planning to add an account reconciliation feature? I love this question. This is one of the things that I alluded to that we are actually actively working on. Yes, we had some delays. We actually wanted to release it last year, but as I was talking to you about, we had some delays because we were trying a new payment processor that ultimately didn't pan out. Not going to name them, but it's a great payment processor. You're going to probably start hearing their name more and more often. Um, and because of that setback of not being able to go to that with that payment processor, we had to pivot and find the one that would work the best. And that ultimately, throughout our research and experimentation and testing, ended up being Stripe. And so now that we are with Stripe, we are able to build out that feature quickly. And so that is something that they're working on. And Stripe is the platform that's going to enable us to release a really solid reconciliation feature. So keep an eye out for that. I don't have a time frame, but I do know that they are actively working on it now. And all of the things that were delaying them previously are not delaying them anymore. Can we get a list of banks and processors that work with TC? So, Tenant Cloud is able to use Stripe. If you are having any issues with Stripe, definitely reach out to our team. Again, like I said, Stripe has a massive support team, and we have direct contact with them on the back end because we are one of their main companies. And so our team can look into that for you. Please, please, please reach out to our support team if you are encountering any issues with credit unions or banks or any of that, like with using Stripe, whatever the issue is. Don't worry about it. Let our team know. We can look into it and see if we can get Stripe on board with resolving whatever issue that is that you're encountering. Is there any way to get rental payments faster? I usually get these ACH payments in 6 to 7 days. So, two things. One is yes, we do have next day payments which you can ask for access to. Just keep in mind that does not change the way that the ACH, the automatic clearinghouse technology works. That is not in our control. That's technology that's been around since like the 50s or 60s. And our product, next day payments, just tries to speed up the payment process so that you get your money faster, but it doesn't change the fact that the automatic clearinghouse hasn't cleared those funds quickly enough. And so what could happen and what does happen is a tenant may make a payment and you're on next day payments and the payment clears into your bank account because we're basically fronting you the money, right? But the automatic clearinghouse has not cleared that money yet. And there's still an opportunity for that payment to have failed. And so in that regard, it doesn't speed up the payment clearing, if that makes sense. It clears up and speeds up the process of you receiving the funds, but that payment can still fail. And if it fails, then that money needs to come from somewhere. So either you need to pay the funds back or the tenant needs to initiate a new payment, and then the money gets put into the account. So that's not typically something that I would recommend, especially in light of what we've started to identify through our research and study, in that tenants prefer to pay with debit or credit card anyway. And so if you don't have debit or credit card enabled, I highly recommend enabling that on your account. It's instantaneous for the tenant. They don't have to wait for the payment to clear like they do with automatic clearinghouse payments. It's automatic. And even though there are processing fees for debit and credit cards, a lot of tenants you'll find are more than happy to pay that. And so it does speed up, even if not 100% of your tenants use it. Even if you get 30 or 50 or 60, whatever percent of your tenants to use that payment method, it makes it a lot easier for everybody. It's easier for the tenant to budget and plan. They get their rewards and the like, and you get your money faster, which means you get the owner's money faster if you're managing for third party ownership. So definitely keep that in mind. If you don't have it activated, activate it. And if you would like the promotional information that we have to share with your tenants so that they know how to set up a debit or credit card payment, because sometimes your tenants may not realize that they can pay with a debit or credit card. We have information that you can share with your tenants. We have PDFs that we've created and the like to educate your tenants as to the benefits of using a debit or credit card and how they can set it up in their TenantCloud account. And your tenants can also call our support team if they have questions or they're running into issues, like maybe the system's not accepting their debit or credit card, maybe they're punching in a number wrong or they're putting the expiration date in incorrectly or whatever, and that's really the method they'd prefer to pay, but for some reason they can't figure it out. Let them know that they're welcome to call our support team. Our support team is more than happy to chat with them. Is accepting a credit as a payment method more risky? I would like to know that my tenant has liquid cash to afford rent. Does TC integrate with Relay Banking? Relay Bank, I've never heard of that before, so I would say the answer is no. Stripe does integrate with all types of financial systems and banks, but I've never heard of Relay Bank. If that's an actual bank, then chances are, yeah, they can pay through Stripe with it. If that's some type of a payment processor that's like a competitor to Stripe, then probably not. But pretty much any bank should work with Stripe. Even if the bank isn't in their system to add automatically, they should still be able to use their routing and account number to add it into the system. But again, this is where I would touch back to say, make sure you're offering debit and credit, which leads me to your second question, which is accepting credit card more risky? Not really. We actually asked our fraud director that, and it's the risks are equal across the board. There's risks associated with ACH, there's risks associated with debit, and there's risks associated with credit. So, is it more risky? I don't think that that's the case. I think that it's pretty standard across the board that there's risks associated with each of the payment methods. And that's part of one of the problems with the automatic clearinghouse technology is in the sense that your tenant, if they aren't liquid and they don't have the money in their account, but they're just delaying the process and they just initiate an ACH payment that they know is going to get declined, you might not know until 3, 5, 7 days later that the payment didn't clear. And at that point, you're probably at the middle of the month, right? The 15th. And now you're starting the eviction process on the 15th and delivering this late notice and giving them the eviction notice and then the filing, and you're just delayed by 2 weeks already in that process. So I would say that overall, the benefits of a landlord, especially, is better to encourage your tenants to pay with a debit or credit because it doesn't rely on the ACH technology that hasn't been updated in 50, 60, whatever years. And so that would just be my advice on that. Hopefully that answered your question. What would be the reason why the screening gets canceled automatically after I send the request to the applicant? That would probably be because the applicant declined it. If maybe they did it accidentally or whatever, that might be the reason. If you continue to encounter that on a regular basis, definitely reach out to our support team and they can look into it for you. But if it's just like a one-off thing that you experience every now and then, it could be just as simple as the tenant declined the screening request you sent them. Maybe it wasn't just an accident. How soon will the county reports be available? So you should be able to log into your account now and put in that information, and it should be available in your account today, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not, reach out to our support team. Maybe it just wasn't your account. It hasn't been rolled out to yet, but I believe that they've been rolling it out to all of the accounts. I know in my test account, which is a live account, I just use it for testing though. I was able to access it when I was going through the screening process. It asked, did I want to do the deeper county dive into my applicant's information? If so, click yes. If not, decline it. And then also the income insights information to verify that the information that the applicant provided me on their application matches or is at least closely identified with the screening results if you're able to get income insight information on that applicant. Any information on adding allowing tenants to pay with cash using a service like Paylease or Zago? I don't know. I know that we have been discussing that, and I know that we've been looking into that type of option. I don't know what progress has been made on that because they've also been doing surveys with existing landlords to see like what percentage of tenants actually want that technology or want the ability to pay rent in cash because people these days are spending 12, 13, $1,500 in cash, and a lot of people just don't carry around that kind of money. And if they want to pay with a debit or credit card, then of course that's another thing that has to be taken into consideration and integrating that into the tenant cloud system and what risks play into the tenant cloud side and the property manager side and the like. So I know that they've been investigating it. I don't know of any updates on their research so far, and if they've started working with any company. I haven't heard any word on that at the moment. Thank you. I'd like that info for my tenants. Awesome. If you can just reach out to our support team, you can email support@tenantcloud.com or just put in a ticket and just say, hey, I was told on the webinar that I could get information to give my tenants for paying with debit or credit card and how to set that up and the like. Definitely reach out. Our team will get that information over to you either in an attachment on a ticket or we can just reply to it, your email with that information. We do want to actually upload it. It's something that we've recently created as a result of this research that we've been doing. And so it's something we've recently created. We do want to create a resource page on Tenant Cloud. We'll email you probably all that information. You'll get some type of an update once that page is launched. And you should be able to just go into that page in the future and download any type of resources that we're offering for you or your tenants in the form of PDFs or files or whatever. That does not exist as of today. So we're kind of just doing it on a manual basis. When people ask us for it, we'll send it out to you. All right. I think let me look at the Q&A tab here. All right, this is off topic, but there a way you can update the backend to allow for multi-year rent bumps? As it currently stands, it appears we can only add the bumps per year. Any help would be appreciated. Please put that in as an idea ticket. I've actually heard that requested before, and I don't know how many people actually follow through with an idea ticket. And I think that if all the people that have asked me that before would put in an idea ticket, it probably would have been prioritized by now. So I would definitely recommend putting in an idea ticket with that information and that request. I think that our product team would appreciate getting that. I totally understand, especially with commercial leases, that's pretty normal to build in lease rental bumps throughout the year, or even doing like an extended lease, like 5 or 10 year lease, and building in those increases automatically. As it stands today, you can build in, I believe, at least one rental increase, and you can do it on a per year basis. I think they might have updated it to where you're saying where they can do it every year for multiple years, but I totally understand what you're saying, where it would be nice to be able to do it multiple times within 1 year. So definitely put that in as an idea ticket. I'm just moving to begin taking payments from a tenant on TC. I have a single tenant, however, that is not a computer user, doesn't have email, smartphone, etc. When will TC allow us to put input ACH info for our Ludite tenants? Put that in as an idea ticket. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but that is another thing that I believe has been discussed by our product management team. And so if you have tenants like that, anybody who's listening to my voice right now, if you have tenants that are like that, that you would like to be able to enter in their information manually and add it and process a payment, please put that information into an idea ticket and let our team know. There are a lot of people on this webinar right now. And if all of you were to go in and put that in as an idea ticket, that would carry a lot of weight. In fact, anything that you're hearing us talk about right now that you're like, oh, yeah, that'd be a great idea. I'd love to see that in TenantCloud. If every single one of you on this webinar were to go in and put that in as an idea ticket, that would be amazing. There are some comments online about TC shutting down other landlords' TC accounts due to fraud, and the users had little recourse or info. That is not taking place unless there's actual fraud. And rest assured that our fraud director, she is at the top of her game. She comes from another company and from a background where she actually eliminated fraud, I believe, to 0% on that platform. So she is very thorough in her research, and Stripe also has a lot of fraud prevention tools at her disposal and her team's disposal. And so, if there is something that is fraudulent taking place, Stripe is likely going to catch it. And so, I would be cautious against reading things online from people who complain that we shut them down for fraud and that they weren't doing anything fraudulent and neither were their tenants and yada yada. I'm not saying that categorically 100% of those people are wrong, but I would caution and advise you to take that with a grain of salt. Because Stripe itself has a very robust fraud system, and we're not just out there shutting down our tenants or property managers. We love our property managers. That's obviously TenantCloud is built for property managers, and without property managers, TenantCloud would cease to exist. And so we're not just out there trying to shut people down for no reason. If we're shutting an account down, chances are they've received warnings, we've investigated it in depth and the like. And so I would just say take that with a grain of salt if you're reading that online. If you're not doing anything fraudulent and you know you're not, you shouldn't have anything to worry about on the TenantCloud platform. When does move in? I love this question. So the product team actually helped me, or not helped me. They reached out to me this morning and asked me to help them with finishing out the move in out inspection tracking tool. So that should be released in the near future. It looks like it's in the final stages, and so if they're bringing me in on that product, then that means that it's probably pretty close to being released. Again, I don't have time frames, and we don't like to promise people like it's going to be released in 2 weeks or on the first of the month or whatever, because there's always delays in product development. We could encounter some bug that we got to fix and dig deeper and see why something's happening the way it's happening and the like. So I don't want to promise you a release date, but if they're bringing me in on it, then that means it's in the final stages. So I'm your question is amazing, and I'm actually very happy to see this feature. It's something I've wanted for a while. It's just all this other stuff, especially the payment side of things, kind of kept getting that reprioritizing that. So let's see. I missed the first part of the session. When are we rolling out the pay at kiosk features? So that is something that I know that they have been researching and looking into. I don't know where they're at with that process or if it's something that their research has indicated as something that needs to be built. But definitely, I would recommend joining two things. One, you can join our Facebook group, it's a private group, and you can join in there. Second thing is put it in as an idea ticket. There are a lot of people on this webinar, a lot of property managers. So if all of you feel like that's something that is relevant to your business and feel like it would improve your operations, go in and put an idea ticket in because it will carry a lot of weight. Way more weight than me going back to our product team and saying, hey, on our webinar, we had like 10 people ask for this thing. That doesn't carry as much weight as you physically going into your account and putting in the request from your account, from your login. That's going to carry far more weight. So I would encourage you to do that if that's important to you. How do I turn on the county verification? You can go ahead and do that in the screening. When you go to do a screening, go to applications on the main menu on the left-hand side and click on applications. If you don't have an application yet, you can either enter one manually or you can just wait until an applicant puts one in online. And when you're going through the screening flow, request a screening, it is going to ask you if you want to add it. It's like the second or third step in that process. It's going to say, do you want to add county level screenings? Again, if you don't see that on your account yet, then it may not have been rolled out to your account. Or if you're not seeing it and it's been a minute since we released the feature, reach out to our support team and they can take a look at your account and see if maybe there's something weird going on in your account specifically. Technology is weird, apps are weird. Uh, I didn't realize that until I started working with Tenant Cloud years and years ago. but you can actually have one thing happening in one account that's not happening in any other account. It's the weirdest thing. It's has something to do with coding and stuff. That's beyond my pay grade. I have no idea. But if for whatever reason you're experiencing something weird in your account, don't hesitate to reach out to our support team and they can go ahead and take a look at that for you. I think that's been all the questions that we've had come through. And if I missed something that you asked, I genuinely apologize. We are going to cut the webinar off right now, though, because it is 11:04. We've been going for 64 minutes. And so, again, thank you for joining this presentation. I hope that the information that you got has been valuable. And if you need to access this webinar, the recording, you can do it via the link that you used to originally join it. It'll be available in about 10 or 15 minutes. And if you want to watch it down the road, you can watch it on our YouTube channel. We typically upload these presentations within probably 1 to 3 business days. So if it's not up by Friday, it'll definitely be up by Monday or Tuesday. So you can share it with any team members that you feel like it might be beneficial for, or any other interested parties such as investors, owners, etc. And again, if there's any questions we can help answer, please feel free to reach out to our support team and we'll be happy to help you. Any resources that we can get you to help you to educate your tenants on best practices, paying with debit or credit, and how to set that up in their account, or the risks associated with any of these things, any of that information at all, please reach out to our team. We're happy to get that information over to you. And again, thanks for joining this presentation. We'll look forward to seeing you on the TenantCloud platform.